Have you ever heard of Han Van Meegeren? No? Well, you're missing out. Here's a story that involves 400-year-old Dutch artists, oven-baking canvases, Nazis, the death penalty, art experts with egg on their face, and a great irony that really makes you think. Hi, I'm Richard Baglow and you're watching New Art Gallery. Newartgallery.co.uk is a 100% online art gallery that brings creators and buyers together like never before. If you like this video and would like to support us, consider heading over to newartgallery.co.uk and buying some art. You'll be supporting emerging artists and local talent across the UK. Now, on with the video. In the quiet town of Deventer in the Netherlands, a boy named Han Van Meegeren was born in 1889. From an early age, young Han had a talent for art, but it wasn't until he began his education that his fascination with a particular variety of art really blossomed. As a schoolboy, his teacher introduced him to the classical art of the Dutch masters. Rembrandt, Vermeers, Frans Hals and Jan Steen. All of these guys were his idols. As fascinated as Han was with these creatives, his father disapproved, and he often forced him to write lines of, "I know nothing, I am capable of nothing."
Vicious, heartless bastard!
Instead of pursuing his love of art, his father made him study architecture, only for him to rebel and give it up years later to pursue a career as a legitimate artist. Huzzah! Inspired by the timeless beauty of the Dutch masters, especially his hero Vermeers, Meegeren embarked on a journey into the world of portraiture. By the late 1920s, he'd become a well-known artist in the Netherlands, creating his own works as well as creating legitimate in the style of copies. However, some critics noted the resemblance between his own works and that of the Dutch masters was far too similar, claiming his talent was limited outside of copying other artists' work. This rejection would cause a sequence of events which would lead him down a path of deception and a tale of unexpected opportunism against the backdrop of World War II. Van Meegeren set out to prove to the art critics that he could more than just copy the Dutch masters. He could produce a work to rival theirs. In 1932, he bought a great big house and came up with a scheme to create perfect forgeries. In a daring move, he decided to create fake paintings by one of his favourite artists, Vermeers. Vermeers was a Dutch Baroque period painter and considered one of the greatest painters of the Dutch Golden Age, along with Rembrandt. Now, his paintings are old, like 400 years old, so Meegeren not only needed to perfectly imitate Vermeers, but he needed to devise a method to artificially age the canvas as well. This involved things like exposing the artwork to heat by sticking it in the oven and baking the canvas, or exposing it to sunlight and other environmental factors. These would simulate the natural aging process of the paintings over time, and by golly did it work. A man called Abraham Bredius, one of the most authoritative art historians of the early 20th century, and someone who had dedicated a huge proportion of his life to studying Vermeers, said of one of Meegeren's forgeries, "We have here, I am inclined to say, the masterpiece of Johannes Vermeers of Delft, quite different from all his other paintings, and yet every inch a Vermeers." Enter Hermann Göring, a despicable individual and Hitler's right-hand man. Göring fancied himself as a bit of an art collector and spent a lot of time stealing, extorting, and, on occasion, buying art. Now, what he really wanted was a piece by Vermeers. Why? Well, his boss Hitler had two Vermeers, and he had, well, no Vermeers. So, in a pathetic attempt to impress his boss, he searched for an art dealer who could help him. So, in 1943, during the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands in World War II, Han Van Meegeren organised the sale of his Vermeers forgery, Christ with the Woman Taken in Adultery, to the Nazi leader. I say sold. It was more of a swap. Meegeren actually traded the false Vermeers for 200 original Dutch paintings that were seized by Göring at the beginning of the war. Fast forward a couple of years, and as the Allies are closing in, the Netherlands stands on the brink of liberation. But Han faced a dangerous game. When the war finally came to an end, Goering was captured and he went on trial at Nuremberg and was ultimately sentenced to death. Following Goering's capture, the Allies began to go through Goering's art collection with the intention of going after the people who sold them to him. It wasn't long before they traced Christ with the woman taken in adultery back to Meegeren. Van Meegeren was arrested for collaborating with the enemy and charged with treason, also punishable by death. Whilst in prison and not fancying the idea of being shot or hanged, Van Meegeren decided to come clean and confess. But he wasn't going to confess to treason, but rather the lesser crime of forgery. Han Van Meegeren confessed that, spurred by the disappointment of receiving no acknowledgements from artists and critics, I determined to prove my worth as a painter by making a perfect 17th century canvas. Furthermore, as he swapped his fake Vermeer for a whopping 200 legitimate Dutch paintings that had been snatched up by Goering when the war kicked off, Van Meegeren argued to the court that in reality he was in fact a national hero, not some Nazi collaborator.
I am an artist, not a Nazi spy.
In forging a coveted painting, he claimed he duped the Nazi official and in doing so returned the embezzled works of art to the Netherlands. However, no one believed him. Fearing he would meet the same end as Goering, Meegeren set about proving his story. So, in 1947, his trial began. It was arranged that, under police guard in front of the court, he would paint another Vermeer, Jesus among the doctors, using the materials and techniques he had employed for the other forgeries. And it worked! The collaboration charges were dropped, and instead he was charged and found guilty of forgery. And Han Van Meegeren was condemned to just 1 year in prison, the maximum being 2 years, something Meegeren admitted he'd checked before making the forgeries. Now, out of this entire story, I think there's one thing that stands out, a great irony, and something that shows a considerable lack of self-awareness, and that is this. Hermann Goering was by all accounts an awful man. Even for a Nazi, he was pretty terrible. This is a man responsible for some of the greatest atrocities of the 20th century. His American interrogators described him as an amicable psychopath. Now, when Goering learned during his own trial that his precious Vermeer, his famous painting, was in fact nothing more than a spectacular copy, according to his biographer, he looked as if, for the first time, he had discovered there was evil in the world. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to support us, please visit newartgallery.co.uk and buy some art. Thanks for watching.